I used to think the desert was empty at night, quiet, predictable, almost gentle in its loneliness. But there's a reason I can't drive that stretch of FM 170 anymore. There's a reason I wake up sweating at 2:17 a.m., the exact minute everything changed. And if you're watching this hoping for some campfire story or internet rumor, you're about to hear something very different. Because on October 14, 2022, in the dead dark between Talingua and the Rio Grande, I learned that some things out here watch you long before you ever notice them. My name is Officer Daniel R. Holt, Brewster County Sheriff's Office. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in Alpine, Texas, and for most of my career I considered myself unshakable. I've walked up on drug runners, domestic fights, drunk drivers with guns tucked under their legs, you name it. After a decade in rural law enforcement, you learn there's nothing the human mind can't rationalize. At least, that's what I believed before that night. I was running routine patrol along FM 170, the stretch people call the River Road, though there's no water you can actually see in the dark. It was 2:17 a.m., cool for October, about 58 degrees, with a clear sky and no moon. The kind of black where the horizon dissolves. I'd been dispatched earlier for a call about loose livestock near Talingua Ranch Road, and even though I'd found nothing, I decided to circle back and double-check. Out there, a stray cow can get a person killed if it wanders across the highway at the wrong time. My cruiser that night was a 2018 Ford Police Interceptor utility, dashcam running, bodycam charged, radio crackling with the usual static you get in that part of the county. No cell service for miles. It's just you, your headlights, and whatever the desert decides to put in front of you. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not desert silence, the kind where bugs chirp and coyotes yip somewhere far off, but a heavy, unnatural quiet. A blanket over the landscape. Like the entire night was holding its breath. I remember turning down my radio, thinking something was wrong with my hearing. I stepped out of the cruiser for a moment, listened, and felt a slow drift of cool air slide across my face. There was a smell in it, faint, musky, something halfway between wet dog and old blood. I should have left right then. I told myself it was probably a dead animal nearby. Happens all the time. Something gets hit by a truck, buzzards tear into it, scent travels. Logical. Routine. Nothing to worry about. But that's when I saw the tracks. I had pulled off onto a patch of gravel near a dip in the road, just north of a dry wash. Shining my mag light along the shoulder, I spotted impressions in the dust, deep ones. Too deep for a stray dog. Too long for a coyote. They were spaced almost 6 feet apart, each print at least 14 inches long. A big animal, moving fast. But that wasn't what made my stomach flip. The prints were bipedal. I knelt down, breath fogging the beam of my flashlight, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. 5 toes. Arched shape. Long claws that dug nearly an inch into the hard-packed earth. I remember saying out loud, "No way. No damn way." But the evidence was right there, plain as day even in the dark. And right then, a prickling sensation crawled up the back of my neck. The kind you get when someone is staring at you. I kept scanning the brush. Nothing. Empty desert stretching out in all directions. But the longer I stood there, the more wrong everything felt. The silence, the smell, the tracks, none of it added up. My heart started tapping just a little too fast. Listen. I don't scare easily. But if you've ever been alone on a Texas road at night and felt something watching you, really watching you, you'll understand why I gripped my flashlight a little tighter. Why I kept checking behind me even though my brain insisted everything was fine. If you've ever felt that, hit that like button. Because what happened next has never left me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a black bear, though they're rare out here. Maybe a big cat dragging a kill. Maybe some rancher's oversized dog. My mind reached for anything familiar. Then I heard movement, quick, heavy, deliberate, coming from across the road. Crunch. A pause. Another crunch. Something large was pacing just outside the reach of my headlights. I swung the beam of my flashlight toward the sound, but the brush swallowed the light. That's when my breath hitched. A shape moved, fast and low, cutting across the narrow slice of illumination. Too fast for a man. Too tall for a four-legged animal. I stepped back toward the cruiser, pulse hammering now. My tongue tasted metallic, like I'd been chewing on a penny. The smell intensified, wet fur, rotting meat, something almost acidic that burned the back of my throat. I don't know if I said anything. If I did, the desert didn't bother answering. I opened the driver door, intending to get inside, call for backup, get the hell out of there. But then the brush rustled again, this time closer, heavier, and followed by a low exhale that wasn't wind. It was breath. Something was breathing out there. Something big. My training told me to stay calm. My instincts told me to run. My legs didn't want to do either, they just trembled, useless and frozen. I aimed the flashlight directly across the road and swept slowly. Left. Right. Back again. And then, just as the beam passed over the center of the asphalt, something stepped into the light. Tall. Lean. Upright. Shoulders too broad for any human silhouette. Ears pointed. Eyes glinting amber like a predator caught mid-hunt. It stared at me with an expression that didn't belong to any animal I'd ever encountered. Curious. Testing. Calculating. My breath stopped cold. The desert stayed silent. That was the moment I knew I wasn't dealing with a bear. Or a wolf. Or a man. Because no creature I've ever seen stands like that, balanced on two legs, chest rising slow and controlled, claws hanging inches above the pavement. My hand tightened on the doorframe. Sweat slid down my spine. Every sense screamed at me to get in the cruiser and slam the door shut. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Because at that exact second, the thing tilted its head. Like it understood exactly what I was thinking. And that's when everything went wrong. My first thought, if you can even call it a thought, was that the thing standing in the road wasn't supposed to exist. It was too tall, too deliberate in the way it moved. The longer I stared, the more my brain fought against what my eyes were telling me. My flashlight trembled in my hand, the beam jittering across its torso. That must have caught its attention, because the creature inhaled sharply, chest expanding like a bellows, and let out a low, vibrating growl that rolled across the pavement and straight through my ribs. I swear I felt it more than I heard it. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Every sound I made seemed too loud, my heartbeat thudding in my ears, the rasp of air in my throat, the faint clink of my flashlight casing against the doorframe. And then, just as the growl faded, something strange happened. The entire desert went dead. No crickets. No wind. No distant hum from the cruiser's engine. Just a thick, smothering silence that wrapped itself around me like a shroud. It was as if the world itself was ducking down, hiding, refusing to draw attention. My flashlight caught its face fully for the first time. God, those eyes. Amber and reflective, shining like they held the headlights inside them. Not animal stupidity, there was intelligence there. Not human intelligence, not something you could reason with or predict, but the cold assessing look of a predator deciding whether the thing in front of it was worth the effort. I should have gotten back in the cruiser. Should have slammed the door, thrown it in drive, and prayed the engine didn't stall. But instead I stood frozen, breath frosting in the air between us. The creature's ears twitched. Its nostrils widened. It was smelling me, really smelling me, and the scent must have meant something to it, because its posture shifted from curious to intent. The smell pouring off it hit me like a wave, wet fur, coppery blood, sand, and something rotten underneath it all. My eyes watered. My stomach clenched. I tasted bile and adrenaline coating my tongue with that metallic tang people talk about but don't really understand until it's happening. The creature took a step forward. Its foot, paw, whatever it was, hit the pavement with a solid thud. It didn't shuffle or drag the way a wounded animal might. It planted itself. Balanced. Upright. Confident. It moved the way something does when it knows nothing out there can challenge it. My instincts snapped back online. I stumbled backward toward the open cruiser door, hands shaking so badly I dropped the flashlight. The beam spun wildly across the asphalt before landing on the creature's legs. They were impossibly long, digitigrade, built like a wolf's but thicker, more muscular, built for running down prey over long distances. Claws scraped the pavement as it leaned forward, its breath fogging in the cold air. No, I whispered before I even realized I'd said it. The creature tilted its head again, same slow, calculating angle as before. Like it was listening. Or understanding. I reached for my sidearm, fingers brushing the grip, but I stopped myself. If I drew on it, I'd have to fire, and everything in my body screamed that firing a gun out here, alone, miles from help, might push this thing from curiosity into full attack. I couldn't risk it. My heart hammered violently, shaking my entire chest. Cold sweat slid down my spine until my duty shirt clung to my back. I forced myself into the cruiser, slid into the driver's seat, and reached for the door. Before I could pull it shut, I heard it breathing again. Heavy. Wet. Closer. A shadow passed across the interior. I snapped my head up. The creature was right outside the driver window. Its shoulders rose above the window frame. Its claws tapped the glass, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Click, click, click. The sound echoed inside the cruiser like a countdown. The window vibrated with each tap, and I felt the sound in my teeth. I couldn't look away. Every instinct I had, every bit of training, every scrap of experience, was telling me to drive. But pure terror held me still. My throat tightened, my hands shook so hard I almost dropped the gear shifter. When it leaned down, our eyes met again. That close, I could see every detail. The fur was patchy and coarse, dark around the muzzle. Its skin underneath looked scarred, thickened, almost leather-like. Its lips peeled back just an inch, enough to reveal teeth that weren't like a wolf's, too long, too wide, curved inward slightly. Designed to pierce, then pull. And then it exhaled. A long, slow huff that fogged the window between us. That snapped me out of it. I slammed the door shut, locked it with a shaking thumb, and grabbed the wheel with both hands. I put the cruiser in drive, but before my foot hit the gas, the creature straightened up, standing fully, and let out a sound that wasn't a howl, wasn't a growl, but something in between. A warning. A claim. A sound telling me I wasn't just trespassing. I was being hunted. I hit the accelerator. Hard. The tires spun on loose gravel before gripping, the cruiser lurching forward. The headlights washed across the creature as I swerved onto the main road. For a split second, just a heartbeat, I saw it move. It didn't step back. It didn't flinch. It flowed across the pavement in a blur, faster than anything that size should move. My breath caught. My arms locked. I steered wildly to avoid hitting it, and even then, I swear the thing could have reached the hood if it wanted to. The cruiser shot forward. My pulse pounded so hard I could hear it over the engine. Sweat dripped down my temples, blurring my vision. I forced myself to focus on the road, on the rattling of my gear, on the feel of the steering wheel slick under my palms. But then, behind me, I heard the footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Gaining. Like it was pacing the cruiser. I glanced into the side mirror. At first I saw nothing but darkness. Then a shape appeared, low to the ground, moving with impossible speed, keeping up as though the 40 miles per hour I'd already hit meant nothing. My mouth went dry. My heart tried to claw its way up my throat. It wasn't done with me. Not even close. I pushed the accelerator harder, the cruiser groaning as it climbed to 50, then 55. Desert scrub whipped past in blurred streaks. The mirror shook from the vibrations. For a moment, I thought I'd lost it. Then something slammed into the rear quarter panel. Metal shrieked. The cruiser fishtailed. My hands tightened so hard on the wheel my knuckles felt like they'd tear through the skin. Another impact, lower, stronger, rocked the vehicle again. It was hitting me, testing me, forcing me to lose control. The road ahead twisted in the darkness. And I knew, absolutely knew, that if I didn't get control back, I'd end up flipped in a ditch with that thing waiting to peel its way inside. I gritted my teeth, corrected the skid, stomped the pedal to the floor, and prayed the engine would give me just a little more speed. Because whatever that thing was, it was getting closer. The cruiser surged forward, engine whining in protest as I floored it, but the thing behind me wasn't falling back. I kept glancing between the road and the mirror, breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Every bump in the asphalt sent vibrations up my arms. My hands were locked in place on the wheel, slick with sweat, trembling so hard the steering column buzzed beneath my grip. Another impact. Harder this time. The rear of the cruiser lurched sideways, tires screeching against the uneven surface of FM 170. My body slammed against the door, a jolt running up my spine. For a half second I lost control and the headlights swung toward the desert scrub, illuminating nothing but dust and empty darkness. I yanked the wheel back. Come on, hold. I hissed through clenched teeth. My heart hammered violently, and I could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline coating my tongue. The smell of burning rubber filled the cab. Then came the sound that froze my blood. A raw, deep, guttural, rising into a snarl that rattled the cruiser's frame. Not a mountain lion. Not a wolf. Something bigger, angrier, and impossibly close. The sound hit me like a physical force. I forced myself to look at the side mirror. Nothing, and then a flash of fur. A distorted silhouette. Those same amber eyes catching the reflection of the taillights. It was running on all fours now, closing the gap with terrifying ease. The cruiser was hitting 60, and the damn thing still kept pace like it was nothing. My mouth went dry. Jesus, what are you? My radio crackled uselessly, white noise and static. No help coming. No backup. Just me, a county road that seemed to stretch into infinity, and whatever nightmare had decided to make me its target. I reached for my Glock 22, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I should have drawn it earlier. Should have had it ready. But the panic, the disbelief, my brain still kept trying to pretend this wasn't real. That something this size shouldn't move that fast. I snapped the weapon free from the holster and held it low, barrel angled toward the floorboard as I steadied my breathing. But aiming while driving? At night? While being rammed off the road by a monster? Nearly impossible. The creature slammed the rear quarter panel again. Metal dented inward with a sickening crunch. The cruiser swerved wildly. The steering wheel jerked from my hand for a split second, and the right tires hit gravel. The vehicle fishtailed violently, and the headlights swung toward a rocky drainage ditch that would have flipped me end over end if I'd plowed into it. I forced the wheel left. Tires screamed. The cruiser snapped back onto the road. My lungs burned from holding my breath, but I didn't dare exhale. The creature wasn't just ramming anymore. It was testing me, hurting me, figuring out how the vehicle reacted. Every move it made was purposeful, calculated. I'd dealt with predators before, mountain lions, rabid coyotes, aggressive dogs, but none of them displayed this kind of strategic behavior. Another roar shook the air. Screw it. I rolled down the window. Cold desert air tore into the cruiser, whipping past my face. I raised the Glock and fired 3 quick shots out the open window, blind, aiming back toward the flashes of movement. The muzzle flash lit the desert for a split second. Something yelped, deep, pained, but not stopping. I looked back, just in time to see a massive shape leap. It hit the side of the cruiser with enough force to slam me into the center console. Pain shot through my ribs. My elbow cracked against the door. The cruiser teetered, lifting slightly on one side before slamming back to the pavement. I choked on a curse, vision blurring from the impact. The road ahead wavered. Then something scraped across the roof. Long claws. Dragging metal. Sparks flew outside the windshield. Oh hell no, Eno, my voice cracked. The creature was climbing the cruiser. I floored the accelerator again. And the cruiser roared forward like it was trying to shake off a demon. The weight shifted above me. The roof groaned. I heard claws puncturing sheet metal, digging for grip. It was moving toward the windshield, slowly, deliberately, like it had done this before. My heart slammed against my ribcage so hard I felt it reverberate through my arms. The smell hit next, hot, musky, foul. Like an animal that had been rolling in blood and dirt. The air in the cab thickened with it. I gripped the steering wheel with one hand, leaned out the open window, and aimed blind toward the roof. My arm shook violently. My chest heaved. Sweat dripped into my eyes. I fired twice. The shots cracked through the night. Something roared in response, angrier now, not wounded enough to retreat. The creature's weight shifted again, and then its arm, long, black-furred, ending in clawed fingers that looked almost human, swept down across the windshield. Glass fractured instantly, spiderwebbing outward in a massive bloom. I flinched back as shards scattered across the dash. If it shattered fully, it could reach inside. My pulse spiked. My vision tunneled. Every nerve screamed I was seconds away from dying. I jerked the wheel hard. The cruiser swerved dangerously close to the road's edge. Desert shrubs whipped past in a blur. The sudden motion threw the creature off balance. I felt its weight slip. Then, it fell off the roof. But not onto the road. Into the ditch beside me. I didn't slow down, didn't look back. Just slammed the accelerator harder, pushing the cruiser past 70. The engine howled, struggling on the uneven incline of the road, but I kept my foot down. If the engine blew, then so be it. I'd rather die from a breakdown than from whatever that thing planned to do next. For a few seconds, there was nothing. No impact. No roars. No claws hitting metal. Just the rattling of the damaged cruiser and the sound of my own panicked breathing echoing inside the cab. I almost convinced myself it was over. And then, from the rear, out of the darkness, came the unmistakable sound of paws, massive ones, slamming against pavement. The creature was chasing me again. Faster this time. Angrier. Closing the distance with monstrous strides. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles felt like they'd burst. "Come on," I whispered to the engine. "Come on, just a little more." The speedometer climbed. 73. 75. Headlights flickered from the rough road. The whole cruiser shook. But the creature's footsteps grew louder. Closer. Matching my speed like gravity didn't apply to it. I risked a glance in the mirror. I wish I hadn't. It was there, running upright again, towering, its eyes catching the red glow of the taillights. Its jaw hung open, tongue lolling, saliva flinging from its teeth. It was gaining. Its gait was smooth, controlled, terrifyingly effortless. My throat tightened so hard I couldn't swallow. This wasn't panic anymore. This wasn't adrenaline. This was survival instinct screaming at me. If it reaches the cruiser again, you're done. I steeled myself. There was only one option left. I was going to have to fight it head on. With the vehicle. With the gun. With whatever I had. Because running wasn't working. And I was running out of road. The creature let out another roar, closer now, close enough to shake the frame. I gritted my teeth, braced my arms, and prepared for whatever was about to happen next. Because this thing wasn't giving up. And neither was I. For a moment, the road straightened out in front of me, a thin gray ribbon stretching through miles of empty desert. The speedometer hovered just under 80, the engine begging for mercy, warning lights flickering from the abuse. I should have felt some relief, distance, speed, forward momentum. Instead, the deeper I got into that stretch of FM 170, the more the terror settled into my bones. Because I realized something that froze me harder than any roar or claw mark. It wasn't trying to kill me immediately. It was hunting me, hurting me, driving me deeper into the dark, away from the sparse pockets of human life scattered near Talingua. I kept glancing at the mirror, expecting to see those amber eyes right behind me again. But after that last charge, the creature disappeared from view. No more thudding footsteps, no more clawing metal. The night outside had swallowed it whole. But I didn't trust that silence. I'd heard that unnatural quiet once already tonight. I knew what it meant. I slowed the cruiser, only slightly, only enough that the engine stopped screaming. 70 dropped to 60. Then 55. The broken windshield rattled with every bump, fine glass dust shimmering across the dash. The cruiser's cabin smelled like sweat, copper, dust, and whatever rancid stench the creature had smeared onto the roof. My chest tightened with a tremor I couldn't shake. My left hand kept twitching involuntarily on the steering wheel. My breath wouldn't settle into a rhythm. I needed to think. But thinking was hard when every nerve felt like it was vibrating. "Control your breathing," I muttered to myself. "In through the nose, out through." A shape flickered to my right, just beyond the headlight range. My stomach dropped. I jerked the wheel reflexively, tires skidding before I corrected. The cruiser fishtailed slightly, dust kicking up behind me. It was moving alongside me. Fast. Keeping pace in the brush. I killed the headlights. Instantly, the desert vanished. Everything outside the cracked windshield dissolved into thick, suffocating black. The only light came from the dashboard and the faint shimmer of stars above me. My heartbeat pounded in my ears so loudly it felt like it shook the seat. Then, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft at first, as though it were testing how close it could get without revealing itself. Then a faint scrape of claws on dirt. A rustle of brush flattening under massive weight. Something breathing, slow, deep, controlled, just beyond visibility. It wasn't gone. It wasn't retreating. It had simply changed tactics. I flicked the headlights back on. Nothing. But the hairs on the back of my neck rose as though electricity hovered in the air. The creature was nearby. Close enough that I could feel its awareness, like a pressure under my skin. I forced myself to swallow, but my throat was so tight the breath came with a shudder. I needed a plan. Needed a destination. But out here, the nearest structure was miles away, and my radio was still useless. Every option I had felt like a temporary fix, a band-aid over an arterial bleed. I pressed the gas again, pushing up to 50. Movement reappeared. This time to my left. A blur between shrubs. A flash of fur. A shape rising briefly onto two legs before dropping low again. Keeping pace effortlessly, silently, except for the occasional crunch of gravel under massive paws. It was stalking me in parallel. Waiting for a mistake. Waiting for me to stop. My mind raced. My breathing quickened. The steering wheel shook under my trembling hands. I cracked the window an inch to hear better. Instantly the desert air poured in, cold, dry, and carrying that same musky, rotten smell. My stomach rolled. I gagged and shoved the window back up. No more pretending. This thing was not some lost predator acting on instinct. It was methodical. Observant. Intelligent. The kind of intelligence that studies weakness before exploiting it. The cruiser jolted as a pothole caught the front tire. My heart seized. I gripped the wheel tighter. Another rustle to the right. Another flash. It was circling back. Faster. Closer. Testing me over and over. My breathing sped up. Short bursts. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I kept blinking, clearing the sting of sweat and dust from my eyes. I couldn't keep driving aimlessly. I needed shelter. Or height. Or distance. Something, anything, it couldn't easily reach. A small rocky incline loomed ahead, one of the many limestone formations that dotted the desert near this part of the highway. If I could get some elevation, maybe I'd buy myself time. Maybe the creature wouldn't risk climbing after the damage I'd inflicted. But if the cruiser stalled or got stuck on uneven terrain, I'd be trapped. I hesitated for a second too long. A roar tore through the darkness behind me, closer now, impossibly close. The sound vibrated the air, rattled the broken windshield, and made my ears ring. It was charging again. I didn't need to see it. I could feel the weight of it barreling toward me like a freight train. Adrenaline surged. My decision was made. I cut sharply onto the dirt shoulder, the cruiser bouncing and rattling violently as it left the pavement. The incline was steeper than it looked. Rocks clattered under the tires, the suspension groaning in protest. The engine sputtered once, my heart stopped, then caught again. I pushed harder. Halfway up the slope, I felt it. A dull thump behind me. The creature was climbing after the cruiser. I kept going, teeth clenched so hard my jaw throbbed. The cruiser scraped against a rock outcrop, metal grinding stone. Dust filled the air. The headlights illuminated pale desert stone as I angled the vehicle toward a small flat section near the top. The cruiser lurched over the final rock ledge. And then stopped. Still running. Still functional. But now perched at an awkward angle, headlights pointing slightly downward. I threw it into park. And listened. The desert below me shifted. Something huge paced near the base of the slope. Gravel cascaded under its weight. I leaned forward, trying to pierce the darkness. My breath fogged the broken windshield. Then I saw them. Eyes. Amber. Reflective. Unblinking. Staring up at me from 10 feet below. My skin went cold. The creature didn't charge. Didn't roar. Didn't try to climb. It waited. Watched. Studied. Like it knew I had trapped myself in a temporary pocket of safety. And it was content to wait until I made the next mistake. I reached for the mag light, clicked it on, and shined it downward. The beam hit the creature full on. It didn't flinch. It stood there on two legs, tall as the cruiser, chest rising slowly. Its fur rippled in the wind. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth that glinted like ivory blades. Its claws curled and uncurled, scraping at the stone. I felt my body shutting down, not physically, but mentally. Like the shock, exhaustion, and terror were finally catching up. My hands shook violently. My breath wouldn't come in full draws. My vision pulsed at the edges. How am I supposed to survive this? I whispered. The creature tilted its head again, as if mocking the question. Hours passed like that. Hours of pacing. Scratching the rocks. Disappearing into the dark, only to reappear somewhere else. Breathing loud enough that it echoed between the limestone walls. Every time I felt myself drifting, its growl would shake me awake. My nerves frayed until I couldn't tell fear apart from exhaustion. The sky began to lighten, the faintest gray bleeding into the black. For the first time that night, hope flickered. But just before dawn crested the horizon, the creature made its move. It started climbing. At first, I didn't believe what I was seeing. The creature had spent hours pacing below me, circling, retreating, testing. It never tried to climb. Not once. Maybe it was waiting for me to fall asleep. Maybe it wanted me to believe the incline was enough to keep it out. Or maybe it was simply letting fear do the work for it. But when the sky started shifting from black to that early, bruised blue, when the first thin whisper of dawn appeared, it changed everything. The creature lifted its head. Its nostrils widened. Its ears twitched. And just like that, it began ascending the rock slope with deliberate, predatory intent. Not scrambling. Not lunging. Climbing. Claws dug into the limestone with a scraping sound that made my teeth clench. Small fragments of rock broke loose under its weight and skittered down the slope, bouncing off the cruiser's dented hood. My heartbeat slammed upward, quick and brutal. My chest tightened until breathing felt like swallowing broken glass. No, 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 come on, I whispered, my voice cracking. Up close, dawn's faint glow painted its outline, a massive, hunched shape with fur rippling in the cold morning breeze. Muscles bunched under its skin with each movement. It climbed like something that had done this 1,000 times, confident and practiced. It wasn't rushing. It wasn't panicking. It knew I had nowhere left to go. I ducked down into the driver's seat, grabbed the Glock 22 again, and forced my trembling hands into something resembling a firing grip. Sweat ran down my temples despite the chill. I wiped it away with my sleeve, smearing grit across my forehead. It was halfway up. My breath hitched. I could hear it breathing, heavy and wet, echoing off the stone. Each inhale seemed to vibrate the chassis of the cruiser. The smell hit a second later, thick and musky, stronger than before, like rot carried on the morning air. I gagged, pressed the back of my hand against my nose, and blinked rapidly to steady my growing dizziness. "Don't faint," I whispered harshly. "Don't you dare faint." The thing climbed higher. 30 feet. 25. 20. I flung open the door and stepped onto the uneven rock, boots skidding on loose gravel. The wind slapped the cracked windshield behind me. My legs wobbled from hours of adrenaline and exhaustion, but I forced them to hold. I raised the gun. It growled, not loudly, not like before, but low and rumbling, the kind of sound a predator makes when it's closing in on prey that can't escape. The sound vibrated through my skull and down into my spine. "Stop!" I shouted, voice breaking. "Stop! Get back!" The creature paused. Only for a second. Its eyes scanned the vehicle, then me, then the slope above us. It was calculating angles, obstacles, escape routes. It wasn't acting like a wounded animal, it was acting like something that understood strategy, leverage, timing. Its claws dug deeper into the rock. It started climbing again. I fired twice. Sparks burst where the bullets hit stone near its chest. Rock chips exploded outward. The creature snarled, more irritated than wounded, and lunged upward another several feet with terrifying speed. My heart nearly burst out of my ribs. I fired again, this time hitting it in the shoulder. It jerked back, teeth bared in a violent snarl, drool flinging from its jaws as it braced itself with its other arm. It didn't fall. It didn't even lose much ground. It was strong enough to hang there on one arm, claws sinking like hooks. The sight shook me to my core. It pulled itself upward again. I stumbled backward toward the cruiser, boots sliding. My heel hit a loose rock and I almost went over. My pulse pounded in my throat, choking me. Dawn was rising, but not fast enough, just a thin smear of blue bleeding across the sky while everything else remained wrapped in shadow. The creature reached the final stretch of the incline, only 10 feet below me. One leap. That's all it would take. It locked onto me. Its lips curled back. Its lungs expanded, and it let out a roar that shook loose dust from the cliff face. The sound tore into me, leaving my ears ringing. I screamed back, raw, desperate. Then I ran. I sprinted around the cruiser, slipping on gravel, lungs burning. My vision blurred as fear spiked so violently my body struggled to keep up. I ducked behind the vehicle just as the creature hauled itself over the edge with a thudding impact that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. It was up. I crouched low, gripping my gun with both hands, forcing myself to breathe through the panic. Dust clouded the air. Shards of rock rained down the slope behind it. The creature began circling the cruiser. Slowly. Deliberately. Its claws scraped the stone in a pattern. 2 steps, drag, 2 steps, drag, like it was savoring the moment. Like it wanted me to know exactly where it was, exactly how close it stood. I held my breath. The sound stopped. Silence. Thick. Total. Then a shadow moved across the cracked windshield. It was climbing onto the hood. My heart seized. I darted around the back of the cruiser, keeping low, boots slipping on the slope's uneven surface. I aimed through the shattered rear window, trying to get a clear shot as its massive shape moved across the top of the vehicle. It crouched low, peering down through the broken windshield, its claws curling and uncurling with slow, taunting movements. It sniffed aggressively, searching for me. Then its head snapped sideways. It had caught my scent. It leapt off the hood. I dove flat. Claws tore into the rock where I'd been standing. Dust and gravel sprayed into my face. I staggered to my feet, barely, aimed, and fired again. The bullet struck its ribs, eliciting a guttural bellow that echoed across the desert. It lunged at me. I threw myself sideways, sliding across rock until my shoulder slammed against the cruiser's rear tire. Pain shot down my arm. My breath ripped from my throat. The creature overshot by inches, claws scraping stone as it swung around with predatory grace. It came at me again, faster this time. I scrambled backward along the uneven ground, gun shaking violently in my hands. I fired blindly, once, twice, 3 times, the shots echoing, sparks ricocheting off the rock walls. One bullet hit its thigh. It stumbled. Just slightly. Just enough. I spun, sprinting toward the front of the cruiser. My legs felt like they were filled with sand, every step heavy and desperate. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, focused only on escape. Behind me, the creature recovered with a furious roar and charged. My boot slipped on a loose stone. I lurched forward, caught myself with one hand, and pushed off in one frantic motion. I rounded the hood, raised the gun, and fired point blank at its chest as it lunged into full view. The impact knocked it back, not far, but enough to stop its momentum. It crashed against the rock wall, claws scraping grooves into the limestone. I didn't wait. I climbed into the cruiser, slammed the door shut, and jammed the shifter into reverse. The engine screamed, tires spinning against the rock, fighting for purchase. The creature charged again. It reached me just as the tires caught. The cruiser slid backward down the incline. The creature swiped, its claws tearing into the passenger door, ripping metal like tissue. Then gravity pulled me away, the cruiser skidding uncontrollably down the rocky slope. I braced myself, gripping the wheel as the vehicle jolted, bounced, crashed. Then hit the road with a bone-rattling thud. Dust spiraled around me. My ears rang. My vision wavered. The creature stood at the top of the slope, silhouetted against the rising dawn. Watching. Waiting. I threw the cruiser into drive. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Not dying here." The tire screamed. And I raced toward the faint light of morning, praying the thing wouldn't follow. But knowing, deep down, that it wasn't finished. By the time the cruiser limped into Talingua, the sky had turned fully gray-blue, the first weak light of morning cutting through the haze hanging in my vision. I don't remember most of the drive back. Not the curves, not the mile markers, not the shaking in my hands so bad the wheel looked like it was vibrating on its own. I only remember the feel of every bump, every groan of twisted metal, every flicker of movement in the mirrors that made my pulse spike all over again. When I pulled into the small sheriff's substation, the cruiser shuddered once, twice, then died completely. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. The smell of burnt oil and dust filled the air. I opened the door and stumbled out, boots hitting pavement so unsteadily it felt like my legs belonged to someone else. Deputy Morales was the first out the door. "Jesus, Holt, what the hell happened? You wreck." His voice cut through the fog in my head, but it sounded far away somehow, like I was hearing him underwater. I tried to answer, but my throat closed. For a second, I thought I was going to collapse. Morales grabbed my arm, steadying me. His eyes scanned the cruiser, and the shock on his face told me everything. He was seeing the damage. The quarter panel was crushed inward. Deep gouges, 4 perfect, evenly spaced claw marks, ran from the rear fender all the way to the back door. The roof rack was twisted like wire. The windshield was splintered, patched with long streaks where claws had dragged through dust and glass. The passenger door was dented from the inside out, like something had grabbed it and tried to peel it open. What did you hit?" Morales whispered. I swallowed, forcing my voice to work. "It wasn't a wreck." "What do you mean it wasn't?" "Just, get the sheriff." Word travels fast in small towns. Within minutes, Sheriff Dorsey arrived, followed by 2 more deputies, all circling the cruiser like it had dropped out of the sky. They took photos, touched the grooves in the metal, ran fingers along the jagged edges of the torn door. Nobody said anything at first. I stood a few feet away, arms crossed to hide the shaking, watching them discover each piece of evidence the same way I had. Disbelief first, then confusion, then a dawning realization that none of this fit into any category they knew. Dorsey looked at me finally. "You're gonna need to explain this." My mouth felt dry as sand. "I will. But you won't believe it." "Try me." So I told them. Not everything, at least not at first. Not the way its eyes reflected like molten amber. Not the way it ran upright, then dropped to all fours, then back up again like shifting between gates was effortless. Not the way it studied me, tested me, stalked me with an intelligence that didn't belong to any predator I'd ever known. But I told them enough. Something big. Something fast. Something that climbed the cruiser like it weighed nothing. Something that hunted me. The room felt colder by the time I finished. Morales looked pale. Dorsey rubbed his forehead, muttering, "Christ almighty." One deputy, a younger guy named Reese, scoffed quietly. "So what, a werewolf? You're telling us a werewolf attacked your car?" Anger shot through me, sharp, sudden. "You think I want to say this? You think I like sounding crazy?" My voice cracked. I steadied it. "I'm telling you exactly what I saw. And whatever it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man in a suit. It wasn't anything I've ever seen in 20 years living out here." Silence fell again, heavier this time. Morales stepped closer to the cruiser, snapping photos of the claw marks. "Bears don't leave prints like this," he said quietly. "Look at the spacing. Look at the angle. And no man did this." Dorsey tapped the torn metal. "Not with any tool I know of." I took a breath. "There's more. Tracks." We drove back out, not all the way to the rock slope, but to the place where the first attack happened. The sun had risen by then, painting the desert in pale gold. Everything felt too bright, too normal, like the night had swallowed all the terror and left behind a scene that didn't match what had happened. But the tracks were still there. 14 inches long. 5 toes. Claw marks deep enough to gouge the hard desert ground. Stride length, 6 feet, maybe more. Reese crouched beside one, measuring it with his boot. His shoe fit inside the print with room to spare. He didn't laugh this time. Nobody said a word. Morales photographed everything, zooming in on the depth, the spacing, the trail leading toward the brush. Then Morales found hair. Long, coarse, dark. Not coyote. Not dog. Not anything familiar. It clung to a sharp rock near the shoulder of the road, matted and tangled with dust. He sealed it in an evidence bag, though we all knew exactly how that was going to go. Later, a wildlife biologist looked at it and shrugged. Canine family, maybe. DNA inconclusive. Of course it was. Back at the station, I sat on the bench outside the holding room while Dorsey typed up the preliminary report. He didn't call me a liar. He didn't say I hallucinated. But he didn't know what to label it either. Unknown aggressive animal was the final classification. A bear. A mountain lion. A large feral dog. Those were the guesses people threw around. But none of those things run 70 miles per hour. None of them tear metal. None of them stand upright to look you in the eyes. When the adrenaline faded, the pain set in. My ribs throbbed from where the console slammed into me. My arm was bruised from the door impact. My palms were scraped raw. Tiny cuts from shattered glass peppered my left cheek. I should have been exhausted enough to pass out, but my body wouldn't stop shaking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its silhouette lunging from the dark. Its claws gripping the roof. Its breath fogging the windshield. I couldn't go home. Not yet. The thought of being alone inside 4 thin walls made my chest tighten. So I stayed at the station, sitting on the bench in my uniform from the night before, staring at my hands and trying to convince myself they still belonged to me. Dorsey brought me coffee, though I barely tasted it. "You did good," he said quietly. "You made it back." I almost laughed. "Barely." He didn't argue. That afternoon, after I finally managed a few hours of restless sleep, I started researching. I needed answers. Not official ones, those weren't coming. I searched for stories, reports, rumors, anything out of Big Bend, Tallingwa, Alpine, Marfa. At first it seemed pointless. Then the patterns emerged. Ranchers reporting something taking livestock, quietly, without struggle. Campers hearing bipedal footsteps around their sites at night. A trucker who refused to drive River Road after seeing something tall cross the highway. Hikers talking about amber eyes in the brush. A border patrol unit finding tracks they couldn't identify. All of it dismissed. All of it buried. All of it familiar. I wasn't the only one. But saying that out loud didn't make me feel safer. If anything, it made it worse. Because if it wasn't the only one of its kind, then what I saw that night wasn't a fluke. It was part of something larger. Something living out there. Something that didn't fear us. Night settled over Tallingwa again before I realized how long I'd been reading. The shadows lengthened across the dusty street. The desert outside went dark. Quiet. My pulse picked up. The silence felt too much like the one from the night before. I closed my laptop, rubbing my eyes with shaking fingers. Nothing in any of those stories made the question go away. What did it want? And why didn't it finish me when it had the chance? I didn't have answers. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My life had permanently split into before and after. Everything after felt unstable. Uncertain. Watched. And somewhere out there in the vast desert stretching beyond the highway, it was still alive. It's been 6 months now, and there still hasn't been a single night where I've slept straight through without waking up drenched in sweat. Some mornings I jerk awake before dawn, heart pounding like I'm still gripping that steering wheel, still flooring the accelerator, still praying the engine holds together long enough to escape. Other mornings, I wake up gasping at the sound of nothing at all, the same thick silence that wrapped around me out there on FM 170, the kind of silence that means something is watching. I don't drive night patrol anymore. I asked for day shifts and got them, no explanation needed. The sheriff saw the look in my eyes the week after the encounter, and he didn't question it. Some folks whispered about burnout, about stress, about a mental break from too many years on the job. Let them talk. I'd rather be labeled unstable than spend one more shift alone on that stretch of desert in the dark. I changed everything else, too. I moved apartments. Changed my route to work. Stopped taking evening walks. I even rearranged my furniture so my back never faces a window. It sounds paranoid when I say it out loud, but ever since that night, the idea of an uncovered pane of glass behind me makes my heart slam up into my throat. My therapist says it's a trauma response. She doesn't know the half of it. And of course I told her the official version. Large unknown animal, high stress, long pursuit. Anything more than that turns into pathologizing labels and medication adjustments. I'm not stupid. I know how unbelievable it sounds. But every time she tells me you're safe now, something inside me tightens, not out of fear, but disbelief. Because she's wrong. I don't know that I'm safe. Not when I've seen what's really out there. A few weeks after the attack, I had to drive out towards Study Butte for a welfare check. Middle of the day, sun blazing overhead, desert shimmering with heat. I told myself it would be fine. That nothing hunts in broad daylight. But when I passed the turnoff that leads to the area where it first appeared, my hands started shaking on the wheel. I gripped harder. The breath left my lungs in shallow bursts. My pulse spiked so fast I felt it thudding high in my throat. The desert was completely still. Too still. And even though nothing moved, even though there were no tracks, no sounds, no strange smells drifting on the air, the hair on my arms stood straight up. A wave of cold swept over me despite the heat. I didn't stop the cruiser. Didn't slow down. I kept driving until the anxiety eased enough that I could unclench my jaw. Even then, I could feel eyes. Not see them, feel them. The land remembers trauma. And so do the things that cause it. I avoided that road entirely for months afterward. Took the long way around, wasting an extra 4 to 5 minutes on every route that required me to get close. My co-workers didn't question it at first. Small day tours happen all the time out here. But eventually they noticed. Still not taking River Road? Morales asked one afternoon, leaning against his cruiser, squinting at me with mild concern. Nope. He didn't tease. Didn't smile. Didn't say anything sarcastic. He'd been there that morning after the attack. He'd seen the claw marks, the crushed metal, the prints in the dirt. He believed more than he let on. A few weeks later, Morales came to me quietly, voice low. You hear about that rancher off 118? Lost 6 goats in one night. No tracks except those long ones. Like the ones we found. I felt the air leave my lungs. I didn't ask for details. Didn't want them. It meant one thing, the creature was still out there. Still hunting. Still moving at night through the most remote parts of the desert. Then came another report. A camper parked near the river claimed something huge walked past his tent at 3 in the morning, on 2 legs. He said he didn't open the flap because the breathing alone almost made him black out. He left all his gear behind and drove home in the dark without ever looking back. People will dismiss him the same way many dismissed me. Stress. Imagination. Night noises. But I knew the truth the second Morales told me. It was the same thing. The same creature. The same presence. One night a few months ago, I woke up around 2:17 a.m., the exact minute everything first happened. My chest was tight, breath shallow, shirt damp with sweat. I sat up, heart thundering, and for a moment I didn't know where I was. My apartment felt wrong, too dark, too quiet. I stared at the bedroom door, half expecting to see a shadow move under it. Nothing did. But the silence clung to the room like thick fog. I sat there listening, every muscle taut, convinced something stood outside. I stayed that way for nearly an hour. Eventually the air shifted, just slightly, and sound returned. A random car passing outside. A distant dog barking. Normal nighttime ambience. The world breathed again. But I didn't. I realized in that moment I would never get rid of the fear completely. You don't see something like that, something that shatters the boundaries of biology, logic, and law, and go back to normal. You don't unlearn the feeling of being prey. You don't forget the sound of claws scraping metal as easily as your own heartbeat. People have asked me why I don't go camping anymore. Why I won't hunt. Why I won't take my nieces stargazing out past the city limits. I give easy answers, too busy, not my thing, maybe next time. But the real reason? Because the night isn't empty. Not out here. Not anywhere near Big Bend. And once you've looked into the eyes of something that isn't supposed to exist, something that sees you not as a threat, not as an equal, but as an animal running out of places to hide, you don't wander into the dark again voluntarily. I've thought about going public. Posting my dashcam footage. Telling the full story on every platform that would listen. But then I remember the look on Sheriff Dawes' face when he typed that report. The way his jaw twitched. The way his fingers hovered over the keyboard as though the right words didn't exist. No official record will ever reflect what happened. People would laugh. Or panic. Or demand answers no one has. And what good would it do? Even if they believed me, even if the truth spread, what then? They couldn't catch it. Couldn't contain it. Couldn't protect anyone from it. All telling the world would do is confirm one horrifying fact. Something powerful, intelligent, and predatory roams the Texas desert, and it is not afraid of us. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying awake listening for sounds that don't come, I replay the moment I first saw it standing in the middle of the road. The way it tilted its head. The way it watched me. Not surprised. Not threatened. Curious. Like it was studying something it had never seen before. Sometimes I wonder if it remembers me. Sometimes I wonder if it's still tracking the scent it picked up that night. Sometimes I wonder if, out there in the miles of desert stretching beyond the reach of headlights and civilization, it lifts its head when the wind shifts, smelling something familiar. I don't know where it is now. I don't know if it will ever show itself again. I don't know if it's alone. I don't know if the next person who encounters it will survive. But I do know this. Every time a coyote goes quiet, every time the wind stops dead, every time I feel watched in a place where no one should be, my blood turns to ice. Because I remember. And it remembers. And the desert doesn't forget. I know I wasn't alone that night. And I know, it's still out there.